Hello there, Sukur participants. This training video now is going to be number 13 in the series, looking at the economic component of the community vulnerability assessment. And we'll be diving into that as we go through this video. In the previous talk, when we introduced the notion of the economic connections, we gave a generic list of business types that might be considered. The steering committee, in preparations for the workshop, identified these 5 business types associated with Sukur. Agriculture, including subsistence agriculture, barter or cash crops, definitely including livestock. Transportation services. And so this includes the motorbike services that operate up and down the hill. The arts and crafts markets. The blacksmithing, which of course connects across to one of our key values, the iron smelting technology. And the 5th business type, the government and non-government activity. We invite you to consider if there are other economic types, economic business types that are associated with the property. And that's one thing we would like to open up for discussion in the afternoon session immediately following this video. Also following this video, there is an online poll that for which the link is available to the organizing group. This is our day 3 poll. And this considers representative information about these business types. Ultimately, what we want you to do is to consider those business types and rank them by their level of reliance upon World Heritage values. We would like you to do this as individuals and respond individually to this question. And in the form, there's an opportunity to enter your name as well. Rank these different business types from the most reliant upon the World Heritage values to the least reliant upon World Heritage values. Some of the background information that you might consider could be the estimate of the number of people that are involved in a business type. That might help to inform you about the process. Let me give you some examples from previous applications that speak to this. In the Wadden application, tourism was one of their key business types. So here, the collective workshop organizing group, compiled some information about the number of people involved and engaged in that World Heritage tourism activities, and the financial value, the estimated economic value of those different components. The participants of the workshop gave an assessment of tourism, that ranking process that we just spoke of, amongst the rest of the business types, and considering the question of does tourism have a lower dependence upon World Heritage values or a higher dependence upon World Heritage values. And the graph demonstrates that the overwhelming perspective of the participants was that it was a high connection, a high dependence upon the World Heritage values. For the Old and New Towns of Edinburgh assessment, we asked the same question, looking across their 8 different business types associated with the property. And you see these charts demonstrating that. If we look to the top here, the finance and legal had a very low dependence upon the World Heritage values, according to the participants. In contrast, tourism was the highest ranked for the majority of participants amongst all of the business types that had been identified. We look forward to receiving those results, compiling them, and showing them to you during tomorrow morning's session. After we've done that, we will go through a process of assessing the levels of economic dependency and economic adaptive capacity in the face of climate change and the potential loss to World Heritage values. I'd like to take you on a journey of how we're going to undertake that, which we will revisit tomorrow before we go into breakout groups. So these worksheets and the information here will be available to you tomorrow for the breakout groups. We want you to have those discussions together with the other members of your breakout group. Firstly, we have the 5 business types for Sukur, and you'll notice there's some gaps at the bottom. That's just in case we come up with a 6th business type that we want to include during our workshop reflections this afternoon and discussions together tomorrow morning. Those 5 business types are put into columns in the table. The next step of the assessment is to consider the level of dependency. And this is, and there's clear instructions in the workshop, we look at the future impact on businesses using a 2-step process. The first step is to decide whether the loss of World Heritage values due to climate change, the key climate stresses, will result in a negative impact on a business type or a positive impact on a business type. Now, some of you might be confused at that notion. How can there be a positive impact from climate change to a business? If I can speak to an agriculture example, Canada has already seen an increase in its growing season for crops because of the warming that has occurred in recent decades. The crop season for Canada is about a month longer than it was historically. So here, climate change has resulted in a positive business aspect for those farmers. So the first step here, the first question for the breakout groups is to choose whether a particular business type is likely to, under the scenario that we agree to, have a positive impact or a negative impact. Once the decision has been made about positive versus negative, then we look to the level of that change. So here we ask the question of, will this be a minimal, a low, a moderate, or a high degree of impact due to a loss of World Heritage values resulting from climate change? And you can see some illustrative examples of how the table might be filled for the different business types, positive or negative direction, and the magnitude, the level of that assessment. It's important to note when you fill these out that there is space beneath the table to insert your discussion comments. So please be sure to record the reasons for your selections in the notes section at the bottom of the page. When it comes to assessing the adaptive capacity, we're now looking at the current level of capacity for business types to adapt in the face of key climate drivers. And so this is an important piece to look. The prior assessment, the dependency term, was looking at the future change with a future potential loss of World Heritage values due to climate change. Now that we understand what those losses could be, those changes could be, we ask the question of the adaptive capacity. Now, we firstly note that the adaptive capacity only has a positive effect on businesses. If a business has no adaptive capacity, then it cannot have a negative effect. It just means there is no alternative going forwards. So here we ask the question, to what level is the adaptive capacity? Is it at a minimal level, or is it at a high level? Is it somewhere in between? And again, you'll see in the form, there are illustrative examples of what the form could look like from your breakout group assessments. Again, there is space at the bottom of the sheet to record the discussions, to record your justifications for your selections. Now, an important note, as we had described previously, is that for each of these assessments, you don't need to start at the left column and work towards the right across the different business types. You can begin at any point, and we suggest choosing one that's easy. Have an easy one to start with to familiarize yourself with the process. That is the end of the description for the economic connections and how we're going to approach that and have the information provided. In tomorrow's videos, we'll look to the social connections and the cultural connections. But remember, tomorrow morning, first up, we're looking at the OUV adaptive capacity, following on from our assessments already of the exposure and sensitivity. And then we'll be coming back to the community vulnerability assessment. Thanks very much again for your hard work today. It's been great. We're progressing well with the workshop, and we look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Bye now.